Chevy's looking to tap into the more affordable EV market here with the Equinox EV here. I'm here with this 2024 Equinox EV 2LT. And as always, I'm going to go through this thing from the outside in, talk about what it's been like to live with for the past week. Let's go ahead, take a look. Under the hood here, we don't have a frunk. It's just kind of the way Chevy packages things. They don't typically put a frunk in. So if that's a deal breaker, then this is the end of the road. But honestly, it's not a deal breaker for me. It probably isn't a deal breaker for most people. Since I'm a creature of habit, we'll talk about the powertrain while we're here as well. 85 kilowatt hour battery in this one, 319 miles of range is the estimate for the front wheel drive version, 285 miles of range in the all-wheel drive version. I've got the front wheel drive here, and when I'm fully charged, it's telling me about 328. So the estimate might be a little bit low on this one with that 319. Looking at 213 horsepower, 236 pound-feet of torque. Those are both perfectly reasonable numbers, honestly. A lot of these new EVs are coming out with 400, 500, 600 horsepower and these family crossovers, and like people just don't know what to do with this much power. So I'm glad that they kept it a little bit more reasonable here. It's still plenty quick. It's still pretty much instant. We'll talk about it more during the drive. In terms of charging, the way that they advertise their charging in the media kits is a little bit odd. They say you get 34 miles per hour back. If you're using a level 2, you can get 77 miles per 10 minutes back if you're using a 150 fast charger. I don't know why they do it that way. Then it makes it a lot harder to compare to other vehicles on the market. But if we break that down a little bit, so 150 is a little bit on the slow side if you're comparing the max charging rates of other cars out there. A lot can accept a 250 or a 350 nowadays. So 150 is on the lower end, but you can still get from 10 to 80% in about 35 minutes or so, probably, at least according to some of the charts that I've seen. Now, if you're using a level 2, you're probably looking at about 9 hours, if I did that math correctly, with the 34 per hour on a level 2, if you're going from 0 to 100%. Now, I've been using a level 1. It's been totally fine. I can get through the week and then basically charge it up over the weekend and then be fine to go through the next week. But if I went maybe 2 weeks in a row where I didn't have that full weekend of charging, then I might have to top it up on a fast charger here or there. Generally speaking, level 1 has gotten me by with this 319 miles of range. And while this shares a name with the gas-powered Equinox, it's actually a totally different platform. And in fact, this thing is like almost a foot longer than the gas-powered Equinox. So a little bit strange that they share a name at all. And this is going to be one of the bigger two-row EV crossovers out there. It's like 8 or 9 inches longer than an Ioniq 5 or than an EV6. It's going to be sort of in between your Model X and your Model Y in terms of size. And we're sitting on a nice long 116-inch wheelbase here, which is going to be great for that ride quality. That's one really nice thing about these EVs, is they all have these nice long wheelbases and they all ride pretty well. And we're on 19s in this one in the 2LT. There are 21s available in some of the other trim levels as well. But the 19s are going to be on Michelin Primacy All Seasons, which is a pretty good tire. Glad they didn't go with the tires that were in that Trax or the ones that were on the Invista. Those were a little bit rough. This one's actually a pretty decent all season here. We'll talk about that a little bit more during the drive. But if you get the 21s, then you do end up with Continentals. They're still going to be all seasons, but they're going to be self-healing. So these here are not self-healing. They're not run flats. They're just a standard all season. No, there's no touch to lock back here, touch to unlock, anything like that. They do have the touch to lock up here. And then they've got these, I don't like these door handles. Everybody's doing this nowadays. It's not really a Chevy problem. It's like an everybody problem, especially EV automakers doing these flush door handles. Sometimes they've been a little bit finicky where they didn't pop out when I wanted them to, or like it wasn't unlocked even though it was sticking out. It's just a little bit odd. And I'm not sure how they do in cold weather. That's one of the big issues with some of these sort of stick flush door handles here. So it's been nice and warm, so haven't had any issues with them sticking. but it's just not my favorite design here. The mirrors here, they don't power fold, but they are power adjustable, of course. They do have heat. They do have blind spot monitoring. Those are going to be standard. And then up here, we've got the roof rails. Those are going to be standard. You can get cross rails as well if you want to option those. You get black rails on some of the other trims as well. It doesn't have the standard puddle lights. A lot of times you'll have puddle lights that come down from here. You can option a rocker light, so it'll be from down here down onto the ground instead of from up here. And note that there is a camera in here because you do get a full 360 camera as standard, so pretty nice there. At least as standard from 2LT and above, which right now is the base as of the time of this filming, though later in the year there will be an LT or a 1LT. The front end here is pretty nice looking. I really like the grills that they usually put on the Chevy gas-powered vehicle, so this is a little bit of a change of pace for sure. But at least they didn't just make it all flat. They did put some design in here. You got some like sort of diamond texture going through here, a little bit of cooling. Got this nice light bar going all the way across. You got full LED headlights, LED daytime running lights as well, auto high beams. Those are going to be standard no matter what. You do have parking sensors coming across the front here. Those are going to be standard as well, and those will set off that camera on the inside. Really nice, pretty decent looking front end here. Got some texture up through here as well. If you want blacked out badges, you can get a blackout package as well if you're into that. Back end here lights up as you get close to it. That's kind of cool. We got this light bar through here with this sort of pixelated things going on. I don't like that beeping. So once you hear that beeping, that means that the tailgate's about to open. It has a automatic tailgate, no matter what trim level you get, where you just stand behind the tailgate for 3 seconds and it'll open on its own. Problem is, it opens on its own quite often. If you're just moseying by the back end, 3 seconds isn't actually that long, so it will just open up. Sometimes when I'm going to get in the car in the garage, I'm just moseying around the car, and the tailgate will open and I'll have to come back around and close it up. So that's been a little bit finicky, not my favorite, but at least it beeps at you to let you know that it's about to open. Again, there's a blackout package if you like the black badges. Do have parking sensors across the back. Of course, we have them on the front. Definitely going to have them on the back here as well, and those will set off those cameras on the inside for the full 360 view. Backup cam, of course, another equals Equinox up here, and then your brake light up through here. And you do have a rear wiper. I always love to see a rear wiper. And then you got the power tailgate here. Did have the charger back here, which is what this nice box is for. Quite a bit of space here, 26 cubic feet of space, goes all the way through. You got the 60-40 split on the seats there. And we got a little bit of a compartment over here. You do have a 12 volt back here as well. And then underneath you get an extra bit of storage space. There's like a big open space down here. Plus you've got your fix-a-flat kit. No spare tire, unfortunately, just a fix-a-flat kit. Getting frustrated seeing all of those. But this also does like a 2-level thing, which was one of my favorite features in my GTI, actually. We can drop this down to a lower level here. So if you got a tall dog in the back or just stacking a lot of stuff up back here, then you can get an extra couple inches of space back here. And of course, you can grab right here. No need to grab the paint, or there is a button to close. Now, if you don't want to use the button, you don't want to use the stand there and look like an idiot feature when you're just standing behind here waiting for it to open, you can also use the key fob, of course. Just double tap right there to open the back. And then you've got a remote start feature as well on this one. Always love to see remote start. Chevy always puts remote start on their key fobs, even for like the Trax had it, and that's 20 grand, you still get an auto start. The EV is no different. You can remotely start it, get those seats heated up, get that cabin heated up on the cold days. So love to see that right there on the key fob. The inside of the Equinox EV, which is now just on because I got in and sat down, we're eliminating start buttons. It's been a thing with EVs. There's no start button in this. I am still team start button, but I know half the people in the comments are going to argue with me on that one. So you just sit down, you hit the brake pedal, it turns on. Now Chevy does a good job of making their interiors not feel like the price point they are. And I've mentioned this in the past. It is a $40,000 car, which I realize is not a small amount of money, but compared to the market nowadays, 40 grand is like below average new car price. And especially if you just narrow that down to just the EVs, 40 grand is a pretty solid price for an EV. We're at like 43 here. They change up the materials, they change up the colors, they've got different textures all around, so it doesn't feel like all this flat black everywhere and just hard plastics everywhere. You know, yes, they are hard plastics, but at least they have some texture to them, they have some color to them. So it doesn't feel quite as like cheap as it actually is. Plus, we have a lot of pretty decent features in here. There are some sort of odd omissions, but you do get a lot of decent features as well, which we'll kind of go through here. You got the nicely laid out steering wheel. Chevy does a great job with steering wheels. Nice and easy to use. Heated steering wheel, going to be standard as of now with the 2LT and above. And they put the buttons on the back here for your tuning and your volume. Then you've got a button up here for your regenerative braking, which we'll talk about when we get to the drive portion. They've moved the stock from over here up to here for your transmission selector, which means that they've also buried the lights in here. They did this on the Canyon, on the Colorado. You got the nice big gauge cluster is going to be standard. You just get that big one as well as the big infotainment. That's going to be standard as well. But the big gauge cluster, you have a few different views you can go through, a few different pieces of information you can pull from here into there. Like your tire pressure or your fuel economy, your energy efficiency, a few other pieces of information you can just put into the gauge cluster, or you can scroll through. You got the map in here because Google Maps is integrated. You know, nice and simple. It's clear. It's easy to read, and there's no heads-up display option available. Period. That one's sort of one of those odd omissions. Like even in the top spec, you can't get a heads-up display. This infotainment is a point of contention for a lot of people because GM has started dropping Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. So this one is a Google built-in system, which means that it has the Google Play Store, has Google Maps built in already. You can download apps. You can use Waze, you can use Spotify. You can download whatever apps you want through the Play Store if you would like, rather than using your phone and connecting to it. If you're a Google user, it's not as big of a deal because you're already using Google Maps anyway. Probably you're already logged in on your phone anyway. So if you search something on your phone, then you go in here and it's in your history in the maps. They say that this is the end of the world here. It has to have Android Auto, it has to have Apple CarPlay. But to me, honestly, it's not really that big of a deal because you still can just get the apps through the infotainment anyway, and the data is shared anyway if you have the app on your phone already. But there are a few little things that are kind of finicky with it. Like I feel like it's not quite fully baked. Like when you hook up your phone, I first hooked up my phone to the Bluetooth, and then I tried to switch it to Spotify, and it kept flipping it back to Bluetooth. I would hit Spotify and it would flip it back to Bluetooth immediately. The other thing is with Spotify, I like to listen to podcasts, and I like to use the tuning on the steering wheel to skip ahead for 15 seconds. And when you use the tuning on the steering wheel and you're connected to Spotify through the system here, it just skips the whole podcast. Little sort of software growing pains that I'm sure are going to get worked out. Other than that, you have ambient lighting through here. You have all different kinds of ambient lighting standard. You can set your different driving modes through here. You can set up your own specific mode if you want to set everything the way you like it. You can view your charging information. You can update your charging information if you wanted to precondition. You want to set it to a specific charging schedule. You want to find a charger nearby. It can do all of that through here. You can change all your convenience settings. You can change all your driver's assist settings. You're going to want to go in and change some of this stuff because it just beeps so much. This car, like the default settings from the factory, like there's so much beeping happening. So you're going to want to go through and change some of those comfort and convenience settings. Generally speaking, it is pretty easy to use. It's pretty quick, and it's nice that it has Google built in. There's just like a few things here and there sort of still need to be worked out. Oh, you can also view your camera in here. As I mentioned, this does have the full 360 camera here. So you do have all kinds of different camera views in here as well. This one being all electric doesn't have the same problems with cooling down as I had with the Trax. This gets nice and cool nice and quickly. They haven't done a lot of gloss black, but there is a little bit of gloss black down here. The correct amount of gloss black in a car is none, but this one has a little bit. At least it's not everywhere. You still do have physical knobs for your heat and your cooling, and you've got automatic climate control. Note that there is a heat button and an AC button down here. That's not typical. You don't really see that very often. That's something I had to look up. So that will basically tell the car you can use AC, but you can't use heat if you only have the AC clicked. If you have the heat clicked, it'll tell the car you can only use heat, you can't use AC, so that it doesn't waste unnecessary energy, like if you only wanted to heat up or if you only wanted to cool down, or there's an auto that will override that. Down here, there is a space for your phone. There's no charger, and there's no wireless charger available, period. Seems like a really odd omission here. We do have some USB-Cs here. We do have some cup holders here. Got a little bit of extra space down here with a little guy there for some extra storage, but no USBs down there or anything. Up top, you can get a pano sunroof. This one obviously does not have that. There's no digital mirror. That's another one of those odd omissions to me, especially again, because the Bolt EUV had that. GM puts it on a lot of products. There is no digital mirror available, period. It seems a little bit odd. The seats here, these seats are pretty nice, actually, especially compared to the ones in the Trax. I was really a little bit concerned after being in that Trax because those seats were really not all that supportive. These are much more supportive. They're EvoTex, which is GM speak for synthetic leather. They're bolstered nicely, 8-way power adjustable with lumbar support. That is going to be standard. As I mentioned, you can option cooled seats. This one doesn't have it. You can option memory seats. This one does not have that, but you can option those. But these have been great. Have no issues with the seats. As far as the back seats there, we're looking at 38 inches of legroom, which is a little bit odd because I mentioned the standard gas-powered Equinox is almost a foot smaller than this car. That one has half an inch more legroom, but with the way they measure it, it doesn't really tell the full story. But there is plenty of space back there. I fit fine behind myself at 5'7". If you're 6 feet tall, you probably fit okay behind yourself as well. I've got forward-facing seats back there. Rear-facing seats should be okay. Again, as long as you're not like super, super tall. They've got vents. They've got USB-Cs back there. Pretty nice interior overall for this price point. Plenty of space. Doesn't feel super cheap. Really plenty comfortable. Definitely just need to work out a few things in here. So just a quick note about like real world charging with a level 1 as my week with this car comes to an end. So right now it's Thursday morning. Monday morning, I had a full charge, 100%. I'm driving 25 miles each way, so 50 miles a day. I'm charging overnight on a level 1 from about 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. And I ended up with about 270 miles of range left this morning still. I could go a couple of weeks here, even just with my level 1 charger at home, before I ever had to go find a fast charger or go find another charger anywhere else. But to get into the driving experience here, so I mean, this thing is great to drive. EVs are great commuter cars. If you just need something to get you from A to B comfortably, EVs are really very good at that. And this one is no different here. You expect it to be kind of loud because you expect, or I do at least, because I expect like all of the other things, the wind noise, the tire noise, all these other noises to be more apparent just because there is no engine noise. And Chevy has done a very good job of keeping those noises out. It is pretty quiet here on the highway. I don't really hear any tire noise at all. A little bit of wind noise once you start getting into higher speeds, but really it is very nice and quiet in here. The ride is very comfortable. The ride is very smooth. Some people say 200 horsepower is not enough. You know, car enthusiasts are especially bad at that, but 200 horsepower is plenty, especially in an EV like this where it's like near instant. This one, I have not had any issues here with the traction with these Michelin Primacies, even when I have to move quickly. So that's good news there. It does such a great job. This is where like luxury cars are starting to lose their edge, because you get a $40,000 EV that's quiet, that's comfortable, that does everything you need, and it feels almost like luxury when you're driving on the highway versus paying a lot more for a luxury car. Now, in addition to like being quiet and comfortable, it also has all these like safety and driver's assist features, which surprisingly really haven't gotten in my way at all, which is the way you want it to be. You want it to be out of the way when you don't need it, and you know, only intervene when you do actually need the system. And I expected, kind of with all the beeps and buzzes that this car makes in general. I expected it to be a little bit more intrusive. They really have been out of the way unless I've needed them. It's got rear cross traffic braking. It's got front pedestrian monitoring. It's got all these great safety features. The forward collision warning does get a little bit aggressive, but really hasn't gotten in my way. It has all these great features, really more than I would have expected on the base model, the current base model here at the $40,000 price point. And this one I mentioned has SuperCruise on it. This is the only option that is actually added onto this car. And SuperCruise is really great if you are someone that drives on the highway a lot. This is GM's like hands-free system. Is really only meant for highways. It's governed by radar and LiDAR, so it only works in certain areas, but it's going to work on most highways. So if you're on the highway a lot, this really is a great system. And I'm someone like, I'm a car enthusiast. I like my manual transmission. I like to be engaged in my driving. If I'm, you get all these people online saying like, I don't want my car to drive for me. I want to be the one in control. Honestly, once you use the system, or at least for me, once I use the system a little bit, it's really nice. Like, this isn't the engaging, like, canyon carving driving experience. This is commuting on the highway, and using SuperCruise on the highway is actually really pretty nice. And the system works very well to keep you centered in your lane. It's very communicative. Safety and driver's assist features, as well as the SuperCruise, use like this buzz, this sort of vibration in the seat rather than a harsh beep, which is really nice. But it's very communicative. Like, if you have the lane change on, where it'll auto lane change for you, then it'll buzz at you. It'll say, change your lanes to the right. It'll just buzz on the right side of your seat, and it'll change lanes to the right. There'll be a little indicator in here. Then when it's done, your turn signal will go off, and it'll tell you that it's done. Lane changing, the auto lane changing is a little bit, I don't fully understand what the logic is of when it changes lanes and when it doesn't. It seems to go left a lot more often than it goes right, which was the same thing I had with that Escalade that I was in that had SuperCruise. A little bit odd, but you can turn that off. And even when you turn off the auto lane change, you can still hit the turn signal and it will perform the lane change for you. Again, all this stuff sounds like overkill. Maybe the lane change stuff is a little bit overkill, but it is actually very nice once you start to use it. And my favorite part about this system is how communicative it is. Because if the car is going to take over for driving for me on the highway, I want to know what it's doing, and it always tells you what it's doing. I also have this green indicator here, which tells you that SuperCruise is activated. If it's blue, then it's like looking for an area that where SuperCruise is available. If it's red, it's like flashing red, and that means that like you need to take over. And then once you take over, then it will go into regular adaptive cruise control mode. You also have different driving modes. I mentioned there's a driving mode setup. You can set up, you can sort of customize the driving experience a little bit, but honestly, I haven't really noticed a big difference between the different driving modes. One of the nice things with being an EV, a lot of people like, if you put your gas-powered car into sport mode, turn the car off, turn it back on, then it'll start up back in like normal mode instead of sport mode. But that's like an emissions thing. So this one being an EV, you don't have to worry about emissions. So if you put it into sport mode or you put it into the custom mode, then it will just start back up in the same mode that you left it in. I did notice that like when you hit the gas pedal or the throttle pedal, whatever we're gonna call it, I know it's not gas because it's not an internal combustion engine, but when you hit that pedal, it does a good job of modulating your speed. So it'll get you up to speed quickly, but without like jerking you, without making you sick, especially if you're, and this is especially a problem if you're new to EVs. Like, I made myself car sick driving a couple of EVs that just have like this instant response, which is great if you're like racing someone, but in a car like this, you're probably not racing anybody. And so the way it modulates your throttle, it'll still get you up to speed quickly, but without like making you sick. So they did a good job with that. And then once you are out driving, there's one pedal driving. If you want, you can turn it on. It's a shortcut right here, nice and easy to get to, where that it'll like do hard regenerative braking when you let your foot off the throttle, and that takes a little bit of getting used to. But there are 3 different settings. You can either have it totally off, you can have like a normal, or you can have it high. So you can sort of ease into that. But then once you get used to the one pedal driving, it is really nice. And then that mixed with the auto hold, which is where like you come to a stop, it will hold you in place rather than creeping forward like most like normal automatic transmission internal combustion cars will sort of creep forward. You have this switch up here, like where you would normally have a paddle shifter that you can pull if you want to do like extra hard regenerative braking. So you still like wouldn't need to use the brake pedal. You pull on this and it'll brake you a little bit harder, and it'll do a lot more of that regen braking, since this does regenerate the battery when you are slowing down. You know, if you need to commute, if you're just doing a highway commute or sitting in traffic most of the time, like EVs are the way to go. And this thing really does a great job just with the regular daily drive, just being quiet and comfortable and smooth. A lot of safety features that stay out of the way. It's really just a great driving experience. At the end of the day, there's a lot to like about this vehicle. There are quite a few little naggy things though that are just bugging me, like the door handles, the way the trunk just kind of opens on its own. Some of the things like the little buggy things with the UI, I feel like those are kinks that will get worked out, but it makes me pause a little bit. I think by the 2025 model year, they'll hopefully get that stuff worked out. Or, you know, say with this being primarily software, hopefully over the air updates will be able to fix that stuff as well. But there is a lot to like about this vehicle. I really did overall enjoy my time with this car. There's plenty of space, lots of great features, plenty of range as well. And for the price, it really is a solid price for what you get here. And there are already some pretty killer lease deals coming out on these. Overall, really enjoyable car, just the little sort of naggy, buggy things that hopefully are going to get worked out here soon. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Equinox Car Reviews.